While visiting an orphanage, a millionaire comes across a scene that takes his breath away. Among the children, a girl with sweet eyes and a soft voice looks eerily like her deceased daughter. Confused and shaken, he tries to understand how this is possible. But when she calls him daddy and asks to be adopted, his world is turned upside down. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, tell us which city you're watching us from, and we'll keep going. Luca watched his reflection in the elevator mirror as he ascended to the top floor of the city's largest office building. At 45, his face still had its striking features, but his once vibrant brown eyes now held a melancholy that not even professional success could disguise. He adjusted his Italian tie and took a deep breath, preparing himself for yet another board meeting. The tech empire he had built was impressive. Tech Solutions had become one of the largest companies in the E sector on the continent. But all this success came at a price that went beyond the numbers. 3 years ago, when he lost Mari and Clara on that fateful day, something inside him broke too. Upon entering his office, his secretary Ingrid, a middle-aged woman who had been with him for more than a decade, was already waiting for him with a pile of documents and her usual cup of unsweetened coffee. "Good morning, Dr. Luca. You have 15 minutes before the video conference with the Japanese investors," she said, trying to ignore the obvious dark circles under her boss's eyes. "And Oliver called again. He said it's important." Luca just nodded, diving into his automated routine. Oliver, his childhood friend and the company's current legal director, was one of the few people who still insisted on trying to bring him back into the social life. But Luca had built a wall around himself, and not even Oliver's persistence could get past it. The mansion in the city's upscale neighborhood, which had once been full of life with Clara's laughter and the scent of roses that Mari loved to grow in the garden, was now just a huge empty space. The staff kept everything impeccable, but it was like taking care of a museum. They preserved the memory, but there was no real life there. That afternoon, after an exhausting series of meetings, Luca decided to stop by Clara's room before locking himself in his office. It was a ritual he performed occasionally, like someone visiting a shrine. The room remained exactly as she had left it, the dolls arranged on the shelf, the children's books on the bookshelf, and the unicorn collection she loved so much on the dresser. He sat down in the little pink armchair, a gift from Clara's last birthday, and allowed himself to sink into the memories. The sound of her laughter still echoed in his mind, as did Marie's sweet voice calling them to dinner. They were moments of pure happiness, now transformed into ghosts that haunted him. The phone vibrated in his pocket, interrupting his thoughts. It was Oliver again. After a few seconds of hesitation, he answered. "Luca, I know you're going to say no, but I need you to listen to me," Oliver began, leaving no room for interruption. "There's a place you need to see. It's important." "Oliver, you know I'm not interested in—" "It's an orphanage," Oliver interrupted. "The New Dawn Institute. I'm helping them with some legal issues and, well, I think you should see the work they do." Luca felt a tightness in his chest. The mere mention of children made him relive the pain of losing Clara. "I can't, Oliver, you know that. 3 years, Luca. 3 years isolating yourself from the world. Mari wouldn't want that for you, and you know it. One afternoon, that's all I ask. If you don't like it, I promise never to insist again." The silence stretched for a few seconds. Luca looked around Clara's room, his eyes stopping on a photo of her hugging Mari, both smiling on a picnic day. Something about that image at that specific moment made his defenses begin to weaken. "When?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Tomorrow afternoon." "I'll pick you up at 2, Oliver replied, barely able to contain the surprise and relief in his voice. After hanging up, Luca remained sitting in the pink armchair, his gaze lost in the horizon that could be seen through the bedroom window. The sun was beginning to set, painting the city sky with shades of orange and pink, colors that Clara loved. For a brief moment, she felt as if a gentle breeze passed through the room, carrying with it a familiar scent of roses. That night, for the first time in a long time, Luca dreamed. In his dream, Mari smiled at him, her eyes shining with that light that had always enchanted him. "It's time to live again, my love," she said, her voice echoing like a distant melody. Clara beside her waved happily, holding a colorful drawing that he could not clearly make out. When he woke up the next morning, something had changed. It was a subtle change, almost imperceptible, but it was there, like a small ray of light managing to penetrate through a curtain that had been closed for a long time. Luca didn't know it, but that day would mark the beginning of a journey that would change his life forever. The New Dawn Institute was located in a quiet area in the southern part of the city. It was an old converted mansion with pastel-colored walls and a well-kept garden. When Oliver parked in front of the place, Luca felt his heart race. His hands were sweating coldly, and for a moment he considered asking his friend to turn around. "Take a deep breath," Oliver said, sensing her discomfort. "Ms. Rosa, the principal, is an amazing person. You'll like her." As they walked through the main gate, they were greeted by a lady in her 60s with gray hair tied in an elegant bun and a welcoming smile. Donna Rosa had the kind of presence that conveyed security and affection at the same time. "Welcome. You must be Luca," she said, extending her hand. "Oliver speaks highly of you. Come, I'll show you around." The interior of the institute was surprisingly welcoming. The walls were decorated with children's drawings and photographs of special moments. There was a small but well-organized library, classrooms, a clean and spacious cafeteria, and an indoor recreation area. "We currently have 28 children," Donna Rosa explained as they walked, each one with their own story, their own pain, but also with an immense potential for love and overcoming. Luca listened silently, trying to control the emotions bubbling up in his chest. Every distant laugh, every childish voice that echoed through the halls was like a needle in his heart. But there was something different now. The pain wasn't as paralyzing as it had been before. It was when they reached the inner courtyard that something extraordinary happened. Amidst the children playing, a lone girl caught their attention. She was sitting under a tree, absorbed in her sketchbook, oblivious to the commotion around her. Her brown hair fell over her face like a curtain, and there was something about her posture that reminded her almost painfully of Clara. "Who's that girl?" Luca asked, his voice shaking slightly. "Ah, that's Isabel," Donna Rosa replied, her tone changing subtly. "A rather peculiar story. She arrived here 2 years ago, found alone in a square in the center. She had only an old doll with her and refused to let go of it." Luca couldn't look away. There was something magnetic about that child, something that pulled him toward her like an invisible magnet. Without realizing it, his feet had taken him to her. "Hi," he said softly, so as not to startle her. "Can I see what you're drawing?" Isabel looked up slowly. They were deep brown eyes that seemed to hold mysteries beyond her years. For a moment she was silent, studying Luca's face with disconcerting intensity. "It's a house," she finally answered, her voice low but clear. "With a sunflower garden." Luca felt his heart skip a beat. Sunflowers were Mari's favorite flower. Clara used to draw entire fields of them, saying they were smiles of the sun. "That's a very pretty drawing," he said, sitting down beside her. "Do you like sunflowers?" "They always follow the sun," Isabel replied, adding another sunflower to her drawing. "Even when it's cloudy, they know where the sun is." The depth of that answer took Luca by surprise. There was an ancient wisdom in that 8-year-old child, an understanding of life that went beyond his years. Across the courtyard, Oliver and Donna Rosa watched the interaction with interest. "I've never seen Isabel open up like this to a stranger," the director commented thoughtfully. "She's usually very reserved." "Luca always had a special gift with children," Oliver replied, remembering how his friend was with Clara, even if he's forgotten that in recent years. The afternoon passed quickly. Luca stood there talking to Isabel about her drawings, about the stories she liked to read, about her dreams. Each word exchanged was like a small brick removed from the wall he had built around her heart. When it was time to leave, something strange happened. Isabel, who had maintained a safe emotional distance until then, stood up abruptly and hugged Luca. It was a quick, almost frightened hug, as if she herself had not expected that impulse. Before he could react, she had already run into the building, leaving behind only her sketchbook. On the way back home, Luca remained silent, but it was a different silence than usual. His thoughts were in turmoil, and for the first time in 3 years, it wasn't just painful memories that occupied his mind. That night, in his office, he opened the sketchbook that Isabel had forgotten. Among the pages, he found dozens of houses, all with sunflower gardens, all empty, waiting to be filled with life. On the last page, there was a different drawing. A little girl alone holding a doll, looking at a horizon where a giant sun shone. Luca didn't realize it, but silent tears streamed down his face as he stared at the drawing. It was as if the universe was sending him a message, a chance for redemption, a possibility for a new beginning. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something he had forgotten what it felt like: hope. The next morning, Luca woke up with a different feeling. The emptiness that used to dominate him had given way to a new restlessness. Images of Isabel wouldn't leave his mind, especially the way she had hugged him before leaving. He decided he had to return the sketchbook, and secretly, he longed to see the girl again. During breakfast, Ingrid walked into his office with a worried expression. "Dr. Luca, this arrived for you this morning. It was left at the building's reception." It was a brown envelope with no return address, just his name written in elegant handwriting. Inside was a letter and an old, yellowed photograph. Luca began to read, feeling his heart race with each word. "Dear Mr. Luca, I know you met Isabel yesterday. It's no coincidence. There's a lot more to her than the orphanage knows. Look for Elena Rossi, the former caseworker. She works at the Social Welfare Center. Isabel needs you as much as you need her. A friend." The photograph showed a young woman holding a baby. On the back was a date 15 years ago and a name, Eva and Isabel. Luca turned the photo over and over in his hands, trying to find more clues, more connections. Determined to find out more, he cancelled his morning meetings and headed to the Social Welfare Center. The place was a simple building, full of people waiting for assistance. At the reception, a staff member directed him to the 3rd floor. Elena Rossi was a woman in her 50s, with short grey hair and sharp eyes behind red-rimmed glasses. When Luca mentioned Isabel's name, she closed the door to her office and sat down with a serious expression. "I was hoping someone would come to me about her," Elena said, sighing deeply. "Isabel's case is complex. I was the first social worker to see her when she was found in that square. There was something different about her, something that didn't fit the typical abandonment story." Luca listened intently as Elena continued. The doll she was carrying, for example. It was an antique handmade piece with an embroidered monogram, HM. When we tried to investigate its origin, we discovered that it was made by a craftswoman who had died over 20 years ago. And then there was the necklace. "What necklace?" Luca interrupted, leaning forward. "A silver medallion she hid inside the doll. It had an inscription in French and a date, 1985. But most intriguing were the documents found with her. Some seemed authentic, others clearly forged. It was as if someone was trying to hide her true identity." Elena opened a drawer and took out an old folder. "Officially, this case is closed, but I keep these personal notes. 2 years ago, I began receiving anonymous letters with information about Isabel's past. The last one arrived a week ago, mentioning your name." Luca felt a shiver run down his spine. "Why me? What do I have to do with this story?" "I don't know for sure," Elena replied, "but I believe there are no coincidences. The letters mentioned that Isabel needed someone who understood her pain, someone who also knew loss, and they talked about sunflowers." At that moment, Luca almost dropped his coffee cup. Sunflowers. Marie's favorite flowers. Isabel's drawings. Everything seemed to connect in some mysterious way. Elena continued. "There is one more thing you need to know. Last week, a woman came to the center looking for information about Isabel. She said she was a distant relative, but something about her story didn't convince me. She mentioned details that only someone very close to the family would know. And what happened? Luca asked, feeling growing anxiety. She left saying she would return with documents to prove her relationship, but before she left, she let slip something about a significant inheritance and a property in the interior of the city. Luca absorbed every word, feeling like he was facing a puzzle much bigger than he had imagined. The pieces began to move, in his mind forming unexpected connections. "Mr. Luca," Elena said, leaning forward with a serious expression, "I believe that Isabel was not simply abandoned. She was hidden. And now, after 2 years, someone is starting to look for her. The question is why?" Before Luca could answer, his secretary called. There was an emergency at the orphanage. Donna Rosa needed to speak to him urgently. Something had happened to Isabel. As he hurriedly drove towards the New Dawn Institute, Luca couldn't stop thinking about all the revelations that morning. Who was Eva? Why would someone hide a child? And most importantly, why was her name involved in this story? The puzzle was just beginning to come together, and each new piece seemed to bring more questions than answers. One thing, however, was clear to Luca. Something inside him had awakened, a need to protect Isabel and discover the truth behind her mysterious past. Luca arrived at the orphanage with his heart pounding. Donna Rosa was waiting for him at the entrance, her normally serene expression now marked by concern. Beside her was Isabel, hugging her inseparable doll, her eyes red from crying so much. "What happened?" Luca asked, instinctively kneeling down. "At the girl's level. A woman tried to enter the institute today," Donna Rosa explained, lowering her voice. "She said she was Isabel's aunt. When we refused to let her in without proper documentation, she became upset. Isabel saw her through the window and panicked." Luca looked at Isabel, who was trembling slightly. "Do you know that woman?" he asked softly. The girl clutched the doll tighter to her chest and whispered, "She was there that day." "What day, dear?" "The day Aunt Eva left me in the square," Isabel replied, her voice barely audible. It was the first time she had mentioned anything about her past. Luca exchanged a meaningful look with Donna Rosa. The name Eva, the same one from the photograph he had received earlier, could not be a coincidence. There was something bigger going on here. "Isabel hasn't wanted to let go of the doll since she saw the woman," explained Donna Rosa. "She's scared. She doesn't want to eat or play with the other children." Luca realized he had to act. Years of business experience had taught him to make quick decisions in critical moments. "Mrs. Rosa, would it be possible for you to take Isabel to spend the afternoon with me? Maybe an ice cream and a walk in the park would help her calm down." The director hesitated for a moment, but when she saw how Isabel reacted positively to the suggestion, she nodded. "I will provide the necessary authorization, but you must return before nightfall." On the way to the park, Luca watched Isabel through the rearview mirror. She seemed more relaxed, looking out the window curiously, still holding her doll tightly. "Does your doll have a name?" Luca asked, trying to start a conversation. "Sophia," Isabel replied after a moment of silence. "Aunt Eva said that was my mother's name." Luca felt his heart tighten. "And do you remember your Aunt Eva?" Isabel frowned, as if trying to sort through jumbled memories. "She was nice to me. She always told me stories about sunflowers dancing in the wind. But she was sad and scared." In the park, sitting on a bench near the lake, Luca bought ice cream for both of them. As Isabel enjoyed her chocolate ice cream, he noticed something shiny hanging around the doll's neck, a small silver medallion. "Can I see that medallion, Isabel?" The girl hesitated, but eventually allowed Luca to examine the jewel without taking it off the doll. It was an antique piece with delicate details and an inscription in French. "L'amour traverse le temps. Love crosses time." The engraved date, 1985, coincided with the information Eleanor had mentioned. "Aunt Eva gave it to me," Isabel explained. "She said it was very important and that I should never lose it." As they were talking, Luca noticed a strange movement near them. A woman wearing sunglasses seemed to be watching them from a distance. When she realized she had been seen, she quickly disappeared into the trees. "I think we better go," Luca said, his protective instincts kicking in. On the way back to the orphanage, Isabel fell asleep in the back seat of the car. Luca couldn't stop thinking about all the connections that were beginning to form. Eva, the medallion, the mysterious woman, the anonymous letters. There was a complex story behind it all, and somehow he was being drawn into it. When Luca got home that night, he found another envelope in his mailbox. Inside was just an old newspaper clipping, yellowed with age. The headline, dated 15 years ago, read, "Heiress to Hotel Empire disappears after family dispute." The photo that accompanied the article showed a young, elegant woman, identified as Sophia Godot Müller. Luca felt his blood run cold. She was identical to the woman in the photograph he had received that morning, the same one holding a baby in her arms. In his office, Luca spent hours researching the Müller family. He discovered that they owned one of the largest hotel chains in the country, with businesses spread throughout the country. The empire had been built by Erich Müller, who died under mysterious circumstances in 1985, the same year engraved on Isabel's medallion. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, Luca received a text message from an unknown number. "Protect her. They found her." That night, Luca could barely sleep. His dreams were filled with images of sunflowers, antique medallions, and a girl who, without him realizing it, had already begun to occupy a special place in his heart, a place that he believed had been forever empty since Clara's departure. The next morning, Luca woke up to a call from Oliver. His friend was panting, as if he had just run a marathon. "Luca, you need to come to the office now. I've discovered something about the Müller family that will interest you," Oliver said, his voice thick with urgency. In Oliver's law office, stacks of old documents covered the mahogany desk. "I spent the night researching after you. Told me about the locket," he explained, flipping through a few pages. "The Müller story is darker than we imagined." Oliver began to explain his discovery. Erich Müller had not only built a hotel empire, he also had connections to important European families through his marriage to a French aristocrat, Amélie Dubois. The medallion that Isabel carried was a Dubois family heirloom, passed down through the generations. "But here's the interesting part," Oliver continued, showing a yellowed court document. "Sophia Müller, the couple's only daughter, disappeared after contesting her father's will. She claimed there were documents proving Erich had been pressured to change his will days before he left." "And what happened to her?" Luca asked, already suspecting the answer. "Officially, no one knows, but I found records that she had a daughter, born a few months before her disappearance. The child was never officially registered." Luca felt a shiver run down his spine. "Isabel—" "Exactly," Oliver confirmed. "And what's more, Eva Müller, Erich's younger sister, was the only person who supported Sophia in the inheritance dispute. After her niece's disappearance, she also distanced herself from the family." At that moment, Oliver's secretary interrupted the conversation. "Dr. Oliver, there's a lady named Ursula Müller who wants to speak to you. She says it's urgent." Luca and Oliver exchanged tense glances. Ursula was the current president of the Müller Group, known for her ruthless personality in business. "Send her in," Oliver said, quickly putting the papers away from Isabel. Ursula. Müller was a stately woman in her 60s, impeccably dressed in a Chanel suit. Her eyes, cold as steel, fixed immediately on Luca. "So you're the one who's been approaching the girl," she said bluntly. "I've come to make a proposal that might interest us all." Luca felt his body tense. "What kind of proposal?" "We know about your interest in adoption, Mr. Luca. We also know about your personal tragedy," Ursula said, her words laden with false sympathy. "I can assure you that there are many other children better suited for someone of your social profile." "What exactly are you suggesting?" Luca asked, controlling his growing irritation. "I'm suggesting that you step away from Isabel. In return, the Müller Group can offer you an exclusive partnership with your company. It would be a very lucrative deal." Luca slowly stood up, his voice shaking with suppressed indignation. "Are you trying to bribe me to abandon a child?" Ursula smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm trying to protect the Müller family's interests. That girl, she's not who you think she is." "No, she's exactly who I think she is," Luca replied, "and now I understand why she needed to be protected." Before Ursula could respond, Oliver intervened. "Mrs. Müller, I believe this meeting is adjourned. Any further communication should be made through the appropriate legal channels." After Ursula left, Luca collapsed into a chair, his mind processing everything that had happened. "Oliver, I need your help. We have to protect Isabel." "I'm already one step ahead," Oliver replied, pulling out his phone. "I'll file a restraining order immediately. But Luca, are you sure you want to get involved in this? The Müllers are powerful." Luca thought of Isabel, her drawings of sunflowers, her shy smile and her eyes full of hope. He thought of Clara and how Mari always said that true love knows no limits. "I'm absolutely sure," he replied, his voice firm. "That girl has been through enough. I won't let them hurt her again." That afternoon, when Luca visited the orphanage, he found Isabel more excited than usual. She had drawn a new picture, a family of 3 in front of a house with sunflowers. When he asked who the people in the picture were, she simply smiled and said, "It's a surprise." As he watched Isabel coloring her drawing, Luca made a silent promise. He would do everything in his power to protect that child and unravel the mystery surrounding her story, not only for her but also for Sophia, for Eva, and for all the people who had sacrificed so much to keep her safe. The sun was beginning to set on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, while Luca and Isabel planted a small sunflower seedling in the orphanage garden. It was a simple moment, but one filled with meaning. Like that small seed, a new hope was beginning to sprout in their hearts. The next morning, Luca was surprised by an unexpected visitor to his office. Elena Rossi, the social worker, seemed agitated and carried an old folder in her arms. "We need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. "I had a visitor last night, Eva Müller." Luca sat up straight in his chair, immediately alert. "And what did she say?" Elena took an envelope out of her briefcase and handed it to Luca. Inside was a handwritten letter and several old photographs. "Eva is sick," Elena explained. "She knows she doesn't have much time left and she's decided it's time to tell the whole truth." The letter began in shaky handwriting. "Dear Luca, if you are reading this, it means that my suspicions about you were right. From the first moment I saw you with Isabel, I recognized in your eyes the same love that I saw in Sophia's eyes. The story I need to tell began a long time ago when my niece Sophia discovered compromising documents about the death of her father, Eric. He did not die of natural causes as everyone thought. Sophia found evidence that Ursula, our sister-in-law, had manipulated not only the will, but also the doctors who cared for Eric. Sophia was pregnant when she made this discovery. She knew her life and the babies were in danger, so we planned her escape. I helped her disappear, but Ursula found out. Sophia was able to give birth to Isabel safely, but she knew she couldn't keep her with her without putting her at risk. For years, I managed to keep Isabel hidden, moving us constantly. But my illness progressed, and I realized I could no longer protect her alone. That's when I began looking for someone who could not only care for her, but also fight for the justice that Sophia had never achieved. You. Luca, with your influence and mainly with your broken heart that began to heal when you met Isabel, are the person I always hoped to meet. There is a safe in the central bank, number 2547, with all the evidence Sophia has gathered. The key is hidden in the medallion Isabel carries. Ursula knows this, which is why she is so desperate to get custody of the girl. Protect our little one, Luca, and if possible, help her learn the truth about her mother, who sacrificed everything to keep her safe. With gratitude, Eva Müller. Luca finished reading the letter with tears in his eyes. The photographs showed Sophia at different moments of her pregnancy, always smiling, always with sunflowers nearby. The last photo showed Eva holding a newborn baby, Isabel. Where is Eva now? Luca asked. In a private hospital in Jardines, Elena replied. She wants to see Isabel one last time, but she's afraid Ursula is monitoring the hospital. Luca picked up his phone and called Oliver. Within minutes, they had a plan in motion. Oliver would get a court order allowing Isabel to visit the hospital under Luca and Elena's supervision. At the orphanage, Isabel seemed to sense that something important was happening. When Luca arrived to pick her up, she was already waiting with her doll and a new drawing, this time of a woman surrounded by sunflowers. "It's Aunt Eva," she said, handing the drawing to Luca. "I dreamed about her last night." On day, the way to the hospital, Luca gently explained to Isabel that her aunt was sick and wanted to see her. The little girl remained silent, clutching her doll tightly. The hospital room where Eva was lying was lit by the soft light of the late afternoon. When Isabel entered, the lady's eyes filled with tears. "My little flower," whispered Eva, stretching out her arms. Isabel ran to hug her, as if all the years of separation had never existed. Eva held the girl's face between her trembling hands, studying every detail. "You have your mother's eyes," she said softly, "and the same brave heart." Luca watched the scene with a lump in his throat, realizing that he was witnessing a moment that would forever change the lives of everyone involved. Eva looked at him with gratitude. "Take care of her," Eva whispered as Luca approached. "And don't let the truth remain buried." At that moment, a nurse rushed into the room. "Ursula Müller is in the hospital. She brought lawyers." Luca acted quickly, picking Isabel up. Eva managed to hold her great-niece's hand one last time before they left through the back door of the hospital. As he drove back to the orphanage with Isabel asleep in the back seat, Luca knew the time had come to make a decision that would change not only his life, but the fate of an entire family. The sun was setting on the horizon, and the last golden rays reminded him of the color of the sunflowers that had so much meaning in that story. A story that, Luca now realized, was far from over. The next morning, Luca woke up determined. After leaving Isabel safely at the orphanage, under reinforced surveillance hired by Oliver, he headed to the central bank. Isabel's medallion had revealed its secret. The small key was hidden in a secret compartment, so well camouflaged that it was only discovered when the jewel was examined in detail. Safe 2547 contained an old metal box and several yellowed envelopes. With shaking hands, Luca began to examine the contents. There were medical documents, financial records, and most importantly, a diary belonging to Eric Müller. The pages of the diary revealed a disturbing story. Eric had discovered irregularities in the company's business dealings, financial manipulations orchestrated by Ursula. When he confronted his sister-in-law, he began to experience mysterious symptoms. The medical records confirmed it. He was being slowly poisoned. "Mr. Luca," a voice interrupted his reading. It was Ingrid, his secretary, on the phone. "Donna Rosa called. It's urgent." Luca felt his heart race. When he arrived at the orphanage, he found a chaotic scene. Ursula Müller had appeared with a court order, demanding temporary custody of Isabel. She claimed proven family ties and imminent risk due to her approaches to the girl, explained Donna Rosa, visibly disturbed. But Isabel, she refused to go. She is locked in the library. Luca found Isabel huddled between the shelves, clutching her doll. When he saw her, his eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to go with her," Isabel whispered. "Aunt Eva told me never to trust the lady with the fake smile." Luca knelt beside her. "Isabel, I need you to be very brave right now. I will fight for you, but we need to do everything right within the law. Do you trust me?" The girl nodded, still trembling. "Then give me your doll. I'll keep it in a safe place until you come back. And you will, I promise." Reluctantly, Isabel handed the doll to Luca. He hugged her tightly, whispering in her ear, "Remember what sunflowers do. They always find the sun, even on the darkest days." Ursula was waiting in reception, her artificial smile more forced than ever. "Come on, dear, you'll love your new home." Luca watched helplessly as Isabel was taken away. But unlike what Ursula had imagined, this was not a defeat. It was just the beginning of the battle. That same afternoon, Luca met with Oliver and a team of private investigators. The evidence found in the safe was catalogued and analyzed. Eric's diary was handed over to experts for authentication. Ursula made a mistake, Oliver said, examining the documents. By forcing Isabel's custody, she practically confessed her interest in the case. Now we can use that against her. Luca spent the night awake, reviewing every detail of the case. In the Müller mansion, where Isabel was, security cameras recorded every movement. Oliver had obtained a court order that guaranteed constant monitoring of the girl's well-being. The next morning, Eva passed away in the hospital. The news hit Luca like a punch in the gut. But along with the sadness came a surprising discovery. Eva had left a will naming Luca as Isabel's legal guardian. She planned the whole thing, Oliver explained. The will is irrefutable. Eva was of full mental capacity when she wrote it, and she included a letter explaining her reasons in detail. Meanwhile, at the Müller mansion, Isabel remained silent. She refused to eat or speak to Ursula. Through the cameras, Luca saw her sitting by the window, drawing sunflowers in her new notebook. Then something unexpected happened. One of the mansion's maids secretly sought out Luca. Anna had worked for the Müllers for over 30 years and had met Sophia. The girl looks exactly like her mother, Anna said, excited. And she has the same way of drawing, always sunflowers. But there's something you need to know. Sophia hasn't completely disappeared. She's alive. Luca felt the world spin around him. How do you know that? Because I helped her escape. And I know where she's hiding. But we need to act fast. Ursula has already found out too, and she plans to use this information to pressure Sophia into giving up everything, including her daughter. The sun was beginning to set when Luca left the office that day. On the horizon, a field of sunflowers on a distant farm glowed with the last rays of sunlight. Like those resilient flowers, he knew he had to stand firm and follow the light, no matter how dark the path seemed. The truth was emerging, piece by piece, like a complex puzzle that was finally beginning to make sense. And somewhere, a mother, who had sacrificed everything to protect her daughter, was waiting for the moment when she could hold her again. Luca looked at Isabel's doll, which he kept with great care in his office. Inside it held not only a locket of secrets, but also the key to reuniting a family torn apart by greed and evil. The battle had only just begun, and he was prepared to fight to the end. Dawn found Luca already awake, his tired eyes fixed on the computer screen. The last 48 hours had been a roller coaster of emotions and discoveries. With the help of Anna, the Müller's former maid, he now knew where Sophia was hiding, a small town in the interior of Minas Gerais, known for its endless fields of sunflowers. I need to go there, Luca said to Oliver, who had just arrived at the office. But we can't let Ursula suspect anything. Oliver nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. I'll keep things under control here. I have a legal team ready to file an emergency custody order for you based on Eva's will. Meanwhile, at the Müller mansion, Isabel continued her silent resistance. Through the security cameras, Luca watched her draw tirelessly, page after page filled with sunflowers and a female figure with long brown hair. His mother, Luca realized, even though Isabel had never met Sophia in person. With a heavy heart, at leaving his daughter even temporarily, Luca boarded a flight to Belo Horizonte. From there, he rented a car and headed inland, guided by Anna's meticulous instructions. The small town was a golden sea of flowers stretching as far as the eye could see. In the center of the main square, a sign proudly read, National Sunflower Capital. Luca parked in front of a small corner house painted a soft yellow. The front yard was a microcosm of what was seen in the surrounding fields. Sunflowers of all sizes turned toward the afternoon sun. With his heart racing, he knocked on the door. Seconds that seemed like an eternity passed until the door opened, revealing a woman in her 40s with brown hair tied in a messy bun and eyes that Luca recognized immediately, the same eyes as Isabel. Sophia? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman paled, taking a step back. Who are you? How did you find me? My name is Luca. I know your daughter, Isabel." Hearing her daughter's name, Sophia let out a muffled sob, her hands shaking visibly. "Is she okay? Is she safe?" Luca hesitated, knowing the truth would be painful. "She needs you, Sophia. Ursula has gotten temporary custody of her." The next few hours were a mix of tears, explanations, and planning. Sophia revealed that she had spent the last few years gathering evidence against Ursula, working in secret to expose corruption within the Müller empire. "I knew I couldn't confront her openly," Sophia explained, showing Luca a series of documents and digital files. "Ursula has powerful connections. I needed to make sure that when I acted, it would be the final blow." As they spoke, Luca's phone rang. It was Oliver, his voice urgent. "Luca, we have a problem. Ursula is planning to take Isabel out of the country. She claims it's a family trip to Switzerland, but our contacts at the airport have confirmed it's a one-way ticket." Panic gripped Luca. "When?" "The flight is scheduled for tomorrow night. We're trying to get an injunction to stop it, but Ursula has judges on her payroll. I don't know if we'll get it in time." Luca looked at Sophia, who was listening to the conversation with wide eyes of fear. "We need to act now," he said determinedly. "Sophia, it's time to step out of the shadows. Your daughter needs you." The next 24 hours were a race against time. Luca and Sophia flew back to the city, bringing with them all the evidence she had collected over the years. Oliver mobilized his legal team, preparing a multi-pronged legal offensive. On the morning of the flight, Luca, Sophia, Oliver, and a team of federal police officers, called in thanks to the overwhelming evidence of corruption, arrived at the Müller mansion. Ursula stood in the entrance hall, Isabel at her side, a small suitcase at her feet. Seeing the group entering, the Müller matriarch's eyes widened in shock and fury. "What does this mean?" she demanded, her voice shaking slightly. But Isabel paid no attention to Ursula. Her eyes were fixed on Sophia, who was advancing slowly, tears streaming down her face. "Mommy," Isabel whispered, her voice barely audible. Sophia fell to her knees, opening her arms. With a sob, Isabel ran to her, the two of them merging into an embrace that seemed to want to make up for all the lost years. Luca watched the scene, feeling his own eyes fill with tears. Beside him, the police began to read Ursula her rights as she screamed and struggled. As Ursula was led away, Isabel looked at Luca, still in his mother's arms. With a bright smile, she reached out to him, pulling him into her embrace. That moment, under the astonished gaze of those present, a ray of sunlight passed through the hall's windows, illuminating the trio. Luca thought of the sunflowers, always turning towards the light no matter how dark the day might seem. The legal battle was far from over. There would be lawsuits, testimonies, and painful reconstructions of the past. But in that moment, hugging, Sophia and Isabel, Luca knew that, just like sunflowers, they would always find a way to the light. Dawn found Luca and Oliver on a hurried journey into the interior of Minas Gerais. Anna, the Müller's former maid, had revealed that Sophia was hiding on a small coffee farm. The isolated and difficult-to-access location had been the perfect refuge for so many years. Meanwhile, at the Müller mansion, Isabel continued her silent resistance. Through the security cameras, Luca watched her cultivating a small pot of sunflowers that she had insisted on having in her room. It was as if, even from a distance, she maintained a connection with everything that was happening. The winding road led Luca and Oliver to a simple property surrounded by coffee plantations and a small sunflower plantation. Luca's heart skipped a beat when a woman emerged from the house. Even after so many years, the resemblance to the photo he had seen was undeniable. It was Sophia Müller. "You found her," were Sophia's first words, her eyes filling with tears. "My Isabel, is she okay?" Luca nodded, feeling emotion wash over him. "She's amazing, Sophia, strong, smart, and has an incredible talent for drawing, especially sunflowers." Sophia smiled through her tears. "Like me, it was our way of staying connected even when we were apart. I knew that one day someone would pick up on the clues." Inside the simple house, Sophia revealed her full story, how she had discovered Ursula's crimes, how she planned her escape with Eva's help, and how she had to make the most difficult decision of her life, leaving Isabel to keep her safe. Every day away from her was torture, Sophia confessed. But I knew that as long as Ursula was looking for me, Isabel would be in danger if she were with me. Oliver, who had remained silent until then, spoke up. Sophia, with the evidence we have now, and your testimony, we can finally bring Ursula to justice, but we need to act quickly. At that moment, Luca's phone rang. It was Donna Rosa, her voice full of concern. Luca, something is wrong. The cameras in the Miller mansion have been turned off, and we can't reach anyone inside. Panic gripped Luca. Sophia, we need to go. I think Ursula found out about you and might be planning something desperate. The drive back to the city was tense. Sophia, sitting in the back seat, clutched a small photo album to her chest, the only memories she had of her daughter during all these years. When they arrived at the Müller mansion, they found a chaotic scene. Police cars surrounded the property, and a crowd of reporters gathered at the gates. Ursula tried to run away with Isabel, a police officer said. But the girl, she's clever. Somehow she managed to trigger the house alarm and get our attention. Luca and Sophia ran into the mansion. In the entrance hall, they found Isabel, wrapped in a blanket, talking to a social worker. When she saw Luca, her eyes lit up. You came, she exclaimed, running to hug him. It was then that her gaze met Sophia's. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Mommy? Isabel whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. Sophia fell to her knees, opening her arms. My little sunflower. The hug that followed was so intense that it made everyone around feel emotional. Mother and daughter, separated for so long, were finally reunited. Ursula was taken away by the police, shouting threats and accusations. But her words had no more power. The truth, so long buried, was finally coming to light. In the days that followed, the Muller's story dominated the headlines. The hotel empire, built on lies and crimes, began to crumble. But for Luca, Sophia, and Isabel, a new story was just beginning. On the coffee farm, now transformed into a refuge for the newly reunited family, Isabel planted a new field of sunflowers. Sophia, by her side, taught her the secrets of caring for the flowers that had kept them connected for so long. Luca watched the scene with a mixture of joy and nostalgia. He knew his journey with Isabel had come to an end, but he also understood that he had played a crucial role in reuniting a family and bringing justice. You will always be a part of our lives, Sophia said, moving closer to Luca. Without you, none of this would be possible. Isabel ran to them, carrying her inseparable doll. Look, Luca, I planted a special sunflower for you. That way, whenever it blooms, you'll remember us. Luca knelt down, hugging Isabel. I could never forget you. You taught me that even after the strongest storm, the sun always shines again. As the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Luca felt a peace he hadn't experienced in years. The emptiness that had consumed him for so long had been filled not only with his love for Isabel, but with the knowledge that he had made a difference in someone's life. And there, among the sunflowers that always sought the light, he understood that his own journey of healing and redemption had just begun. Weeks have passed since Isabel's dramatic rescue and reunion with her mother. The media is still buzzing with revelations about the Müller empire, but for Luca, Sophia, and Isabel, life is beginning to find a new rhythm. Luca had decided to take some time off from his company, delegating responsibilities so that he could dedicate himself fully to the case and Isabel's transition. He rented a country house near the farm where Sophia and Isabel were staying, creating a neutral space where everyone could meet and Isabel could gradually adapt to her new reality. On a sunny afternoon, while Isabel played in the garden with her doll, Sophia and Luca talked on the balcony watching the girl. She asks about you every morning, you know, Sophia said, a bittersweet smile on her lips. I think in a way, you've become a father figure to her all this time. Luca felt a tightness in his chest. The connection he had developed with Isabel was undeniable, but he knew his role was different now. I'm glad she has you back. That's how it should be. Sophia, gently, placed her hand over Luca's. You're part of this family now, Luca, in a way that perhaps none of us expected, but one that is real and important. At that moment, Isabel ran up to them, her eyes shining with excitement. "Mommy, Luca, come and see. The sunflowers we planted. They're starting to sprout." The three of them walked to the small garden they had started together. Small green shoots were emerging from the earth, promises of flowers to come. "You know," Isabel began, her voice taking on that serious tone that sometimes surprised adults. "Aunt Eva once told me that sunflowers are like families. They grow together, always reaching for the light even when the sky is cloudy." Luca and Sophia exchanged emotional glances. Eva's wisdom, even after her departure, continued to guide them. Meanwhile, back home, the Muller case continued to unfold. Oliver kept Luca updated on legal developments. Ursula faced a lengthy court case and several other company executives were under investigation. "We're unearthing decades of corruption," Oliver explained during a video call. "But there's more to it, Luca. We found documents that suggest the accident that killed your wife and daughter may not have been an accident." Luca's world seemed to freeze. "What? What do you mean?" "Apparently, your company was about to close a deal that would harm the Mullers' interests. Ursula may have interfered." The revelation hit Luca like a thunderbolt. All the pain, all the loss he had suffered could have been the result of a cruel corporate vendetta. For a moment, anger threatened to consume him. It was Isabel who, without knowing it, brought him back to reality. The girl appeared on the balcony, carrying a drawing. "Luca, look what I made. It's the three of us in the sunflower field." Looking at the childish drawing, where three smiling figures were surrounded by yellow flowers, Luca felt tears well up. Here was proof that even after the deepest darkness, light could find a way. "It's beautiful, Isabel," he said, hugging the girl. That night, after Isabel went to bed, Luca and Sophia talked at length about the future. The truth about Luca's past added a new layer of complexity to the situation. "What do you intend to do?" Sophia asked, concern evident in her voice. Luca looked up at the starry sky, thoughtful. "I will fight for justice, not only for Isabel and you, but also for Mari and Clara. But I will not let revenge consume me. They deserved more than this, we all do." Sophia nodded understandingly. "What about us? Isabel?" "You're my family now," Luca replied, his voice firm. "In a way I never thought possible again. I want to be there. I want to see Isabel grow. I want to help build something new and good from all this pain." In the next room, Isabel slept peacefully, hugging her doll. In her dreams, endless fields of sunflowers danced in the sun, and she ran happily hand in hand with her mother and Luca. The future was still uncertain, with many challenges ahead. But there, in that country house, surrounded by love and the promise of new beginnings, Luca, Sophia, and Isabel had found something precious: hope. And just like the sunflowers that sprouted in the garden, this hope would grow, strong and resilient, always reaching for the light, no matter how dark the days ahead were. Autumn arrived, painting the landscape around the farm in shades of red and gold. For Luca, Sophia, and Isabel, the past few months had been a journey of adaptation, healing, and discovery. Isabel blossomed with each passing day. Her passion for drawing evolved, and now her creations went beyond sunflowers to depict scenes of farm life, animals, and often her unconventional new family. Her once rare laugh echoed across the fields, bringing life and joy to everyone around her. One afternoon, while helping Sophia pick some vegetables in the garden, Isabel asked a question that took her mother by surprise. "Mommy, can Luca be my dad too?" Sophia stopped what she was doing, looking at her daughter with a mixture of emotion and concern. "Honey, you know that Luca is very special to us, but—" "I know he's not my real father," Isabel interrupted, her voice carrying a maturity beyond her years. "But he saved me, saved us, and he looks at me the way I always imagined a father would." Sophia hugged her daughter, silent tears streaming down her face. "Let's talk to Luca about this, okay?" Meanwhile, Luca was fighting his own internal battles. The revelation about Ursula's possible involvement in the accident that took Mari and Clara from him had reopened wounds he thought had healed. He spent hours in his makeshift office, working with Oliver remotely, determined to unravel every layer of this complex plot. It was during one of these work sessions that Sophia knocked softly on the door, Isabel at her side. "Can we talk?" Sophia asked, a mix of nervousness and hope in her voice. Luca nodded, closing his laptop. Isabel scurried into his lap, a gesture that had become second nature in the past few months. "Luca," Sophia began, sitting down in the chair in front of the table, "Isabel has something she would like to ask you." The girl looked up at Luca, her big, expressive eyes full of anticipation. "Would you like to be my father? Not to replace my real father, but to be a father from the heart?" The world seemed to stop for a moment. Luca felt a wave of emotions wash over him. Joy, fear, love, doubt. He looked to Sophia, seeking some guidance. I would be honored, Isabel," he finally replied, his voice cracking. "But this is a very important decision. We need to think carefully, and—" "We've thought about it," Sophia interrupted, a soft smile playing on her lips. "In fact, I've been thinking about it for weeks. Luca, you've become an essential part of our lives. I don't know if I'm ready for a romantic relationship yet. There's a lot to process, but I do know that I want you in our lives, permanently." Sophia's words opened up a whole new world of possibilities. Over the next few days, the three of them had long conversations about the future, about expectations, and about how to navigate this new family dynamic. Meanwhile, the Müller case continued to unfold. New evidence emerged, linking Ursula not only to the company's financial manipulation, but also to a network of corruption that extended across various sectors of society. On a particularly tense afternoon, after a long call with Oliver about the developments in the case, Luca found Isabel in the sunflower field. She was sitting among the flowers, drawing. "What are you drawing, little one?" he asked, sitting down beside her. Isabel showed the drawing. It was a representation of the three of them holding hands, with a big sun shining above and sunflowers all around. "It's us," she explained, "a family. Because family isn't just about those who are born together. It's about those who choose to stay together, right?" Luca felt his heart fill with love and gratitude. "Yes, my flower, that's exactly it." That night, under a starry sky, Luca, Sophia, and Isabel had a picnic in the countryside. While Isabel ran around chasing fireflies, Luca and Sophia talked about the future. "It won't be easy," Sophia said. "There's so much to solve, so many wounds to heal." Luca nodded, taking her hand gently. "But we're not alone. We have each other, we have Isabel, and we have the chance to build something beautiful out of all this pain." Sophia smiled, squeezing Luca's hand. "Like sunflowers, always reaching for the light, even on the darkest days." As they watched Isabel play, her laughter echoing across the field, Luca and Sophia felt a sense of peace neither of them had experienced in a long time. The road ahead was still long and full of challenges, but here, in that moment, under the stars and surrounded by sunflowers, they knew they had found their home. And so, like the flowers that surrounded them, this new family began to take deep roots, promising to flourish even in adversity, always searching for the light and love that united them. Winter arrived with unexpected intensity, bringing with it not only the cold, but also a series of challenges that would test the family's newly formed bonds. One freezing July morning, Luca received a call from Oliver that would change everything. "We did it, Luca. We have concrete evidence linking Ursula to Mari and Clara's accident." Luca's world seemed to fall apart again. The confirmation of his suspicions brought forth a flood of emotions he had thought he had overcome. Anger, pain, and an overwhelming desire for justice consumed him. Sophia, noticing the change in Luca's behavior, tried to get closer. "What happened?" Luca explained the situation, his voice shaking with pent-up emotion. Sophia hugged him, offering silent comfort. "I need to get back to the city," Luca said finally. "I need to face this head-on." The news of Luca's departure hit Isabel like a thunderbolt. "You promised you'd stay," she cried, tears. streaming down her face. "You said we'd be a family." Luca's heart broke when he saw the pain in the girl's eyes. "Isabel, my love, I'll come back, I promise, but there are some things I need to take care of." In the days that followed Luca's departure, the farm seemed to have lost some of its light. Isabel withdrew into herself, spending hours in silence, drawing dark scenes that worried Sophia. In the city, Luca threw himself headfirst into the case. Working tirelessly with Oliver and the investigative team, they built a solid case against Ursula and her accomplices. One night, exhausted after a long day of depositions, Luca found a drawing of Isabel that he had brought with him. It was a picture of the three of them surrounded by sunflowers. In that moment, he realized he was losing sight of what really mattered. Meanwhile, back at the farm, a severe storm hit the area. Strong winds and heavy rain caused damage, including damage to the roof of the house. Sophia and Isabel, frightened, took shelter in the basement. "Mommy," Isabel whispered, clinging to Sophia. "What if Luca doesn't come back? What if he forgets us like Daddy did?" Sophia hugged her daughter tightly. "Luca is different, honey. He loves us. Sometimes the people we love have to go away for a while, but that doesn't mean they stop loving us." The storm raged all night. In the morning, when they were finally able to leave, the scene was desolate. The sunflower field was devastated, flowers fallen and stems broken everywhere. Isabel ran into the field, tears in her eyes as she saw the destruction. It was then that she noticed something. Amidst the chaos, a single sunflower remained standing, its flower still facing the rising sun. "Mommy, look!" Isabel exclaimed, pointing to the solitary flower. "It's just like us. Even with all the storm, we're still here, still reaching for the sun." At that exact moment, the sound of a car approaching caught their attention. Luca jumped out of the vehicle before it even came to a complete stop, running towards them. "I saw the news about the storm," he said, hugging them both. "I came as fast as I could. Are you okay?" Isabel clung to Luca, sobbing. "You're back. You're really back." Luca knelt down, getting to eye level with the girl. "I'll always come back, Isabel. You're my family now. And family means no one gets left behind or forgotten." Sophia watched the scene, silent tears streaming down her face. Luca stood up, hugging her too. "I'm sorry for leaving like that. I realized I was making the same mistake as before, letting the pain consume me. But now I know where I belong." In the days that followed, the entire community came together to help rebuild. The sunflower field was replanted, with Luca, Sophia, and Isabel working side by side, their hands in the soil planting seeds of hope. One afternoon, as they rested after a long day of work, Luca shared the news from the city. The case against Ursula was moving forward, and there was a good chance that justice would be served not only for Isabel and Sophia, but for Mari and Clara as well. "But I understood something important," Luca said, looking out at the horizon, where the sun was setting. "Justice is important, but it cannot be the center of our lives. What really matters is here now. It is the love we build, the family we choose." Isabel, who was lying on Sophia's lap, suddenly stood up. "Look!" she exclaimed, pointing to the sky. A magnificent rainbow formed, its vibrant colors contrasting with the still cloudy sky. It was as if nature was reflecting their own journey. After the storm came the promise of better days. "You know," Isabel said, her voice filled with wisdom beyond her years, "I think we're like this rainbow. Each of us is a different color, but together we make something beautiful." Luca and Sophia exchanged emotional glances. In that moment, beneath the rainbow and surrounded by the sprouts of new sunflowers, they knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together as the family they had become. Spring had arrived, bringing with it an explosion of color and life to the farm. The field of sunflowers planted months earlier was now a sea of golden flowers, gently swaying in the breeze. For Luca, Sophia, and Isabel, it was more than just a spectacle of nature. It was a tangible symbol of their journey, their resilience, and most of all, their love. A sunny September morning marked the beginning of a new phase. Luca woke up early, as usual, but this time with palpable nervousness. Today was the day that Isabel's adoption process would finally be made official. "Is everything okay?" Sophia asked, finding him on the porch, an untouched cup of coffee in his hands. Luca smiled, a mix of anxiety and happiness in his eyes. "Just thinking about how we got here. It almost feels like a dream." Sophia intertwined her fingers with his. Over the past few months, their relationship had slowly blossomed, like sunflowers in a field. From the friendship born of adversity, a deep and mature love had emerged. "It's not a dream," she whispered. "It's our reality. One we built together, step by step." The sound of hurried footsteps interrupted the moment. Isabel appeared, still in her pajamas, her eyes shining with excitement. "It's today. Today we're officially going to be a family," she exclaimed, throwing herself into Luca and Sophia's arms. The trip to the town courthouse was filled with lively conversation and plans for the future. Isabel talked non-stop about the party they were going to throw to celebrate, how she wanted to redecorate her room now that it was permanent, and about the new plans she had for the sunflower field. At the courthouse, they were greeted by familiar faces. Oliver was there, of course, along with Donna Rosa from the orphanage, and even some of the Millers' former employees who had become close allies during the legal process. When the judge finally pronounced the words that made the adoption official, the room erupted in applause. Isabel, with tears of happiness, hugged Luca and Sophia with all the strength her small arms would allow. "We're a real family now," she said, her voice choked with emotion. Luca, also with tears in his eyes, knelt down to Isabel's level. "My dear, we've always been a real family. This right here," he pointed to his heart, "is what really matters. But now the rest of the world also recognizes what we already knew." Back at the farm, a surprise awaited. The employees, along with friends and neighbors, had organized a small celebration. The garden was decorated with colorful ribbons and, of course, sunflowers everywhere. As the party unfolded, Luca found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. The pain of losing Mari and Clara would never completely fade, but now it was accompanied by a deep gratitude for the new love he had found. Sophia, noticing his moment of introspection, approached. "What are you thinking about?" "How unpredictable life is," he replied, pulling her close. "A few years ago, I thought my love story was over, that I would never feel joy or purpose again. And now look at us." Sophia smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "The sunflowers taught us well, didn't they? Always seek the light, even on the darkest days." The party continued into the night. Isabel, the center of attention, was glowing with happiness, running among the guests and proudly showing the adoption papers to everyone who wanted to see. As night fell and the last guests left, the new Müller-Frisk family gathered in the sunflower field. Under a starry sky, they sat in a small circle, the giant flowers creating a natural shelter around them. "I have an idea," Isabel said suddenly. "Let's make a promise, a family promise." Luca and Sophia exchanged curious glances. "What kind of promise, dear?" Sophia asked. Isabel picked up one of the fallen flowers, holding it like a scepter. "I promise to always love you, even when I'm angry. I promise to be brave like the sunflowers, always reaching for the light. And I promise to never forget how lucky we are to have found each other." With tears in their eyes, Luca and Sophia repeated the promise, each adding their own personal touches. At the end, the three embraced, forming a perfect circle of love and unity. That night, as they tucked Isabel into bed, Luca and Sophia felt a deep peace. The road to this point had been long and often painful, but each step had taken them exactly where they were supposed to be. "You know," Sophia said as they softly closed the door to Isabel's room, "I think we've found our happy ending." Luca smiled, pulling her into a hug. "No, my love. We have found our new beginning." And so, under the watchful gaze of the sunflowers that stretched to the horizon, the Müller-Frisk family prepared to write the next chapters of their story. A story of love, overcoming and above all the incredible capacity of the human heart to blossom even in the most unlikely circumstances.